Thank you all for joining this breakout session. I know a few people are still coming in. Thank you, Warren, for inviting me to speak today. So my name is Alhamidi Hay, and I'm a research geneticist with the USDA ARS in my city, Montana. And today I will share with you some of the work we did looking at the genetics of old Angus bulls that that were stored at the USDA Gene Bank in Fort Collins, Colorado. So that this work is in collaboration with the Jorgensen cattle from Ideal, South Dakota. And the USDA Gene Bank is located in Fort Collins, Colorado. If you've never been there, I highly suggest taking a tour if you're ever in that area of Fort Collins, Colorado. It has a substantial collection of most livestock species germplasm. For beef cattle, it has multiple breeds. As you can see there, it has 11,000 animals germplasm stored, 270,000 samples, and the bull birth years range from 1943 to 2022. So we have like a whole wide germplasm stored there, from older animals to more recent animals. And so it's not just storing the germplasm, so that gene bank has some other uses. For example, like introducing genetic diversity, as we will talk about today, and could be used for alleviating inbreeding depression, or corrective mating, or reconstituting populations. So it has several uses other than just purely storing germplasm. So one major question when introducing genetic diversity is, can we do so without compromising performance? So that's the main question, and that's what I will talk about here. So first, I would like to share with you some of the results from what you could call a companion experiment or study, which is done in the Holstein population. So two Holstein bulls whose genetics have been lost from the population, these 1960s bulls, they were reintroduced, they were mated to contemporary dams. And this study was led by the Penn State, Pennsylvania. And so then they looked at the performance of these F1s crossing these older bulls with contemporary dams, and they compared them to contemporary bulls with contemporary dams. And so the first section of the table, we have the genomic DTAs, the predicted transmittability, which could be compared, I guess, to NPDs in the beef world. And then we have, genomic net merit. So you can see that for the genomic DTAs, yes, the modern bulls are better. 321 compared to my 785 for the genomic PTA of milk. But keep in mind that these PTA, could be biased just because, the training data set of Holstein is so different than these, than these two bulls, because, these two bulls, their genetics were lost, so they are not contained per se in the training data set where you estimate, the effect of genomic information. But when you look at the raw phenotypes, like the lifetime milk production, so the old is 82,000 versus 62,000 for modern sires. So you can see that, the lifetime milk production of progeny from old sires is higher than the modern sires. And this could be due to, several things. It could be due to heterosis, alleviating that inbreeding depression, etc. And I believe Dr. John Cole will talk about inbreeding in Holstein's dairy. So in that bottom section of the table is the runs of homozygosity, which I will talk about later, and I will explain what that is. But so you can see that for modern, yes, that total length of runs of homozygosity is longer, just because of years of selection. So you fixate those long runs of homozygosity for both pilot and Cuthbert. So pilot and Cuthbert are those two old bulls. I should have mentioned that. Those are the names of the two old bulls. And so for the F1s, the runs of homozygosity are smaller. They are not as homozygous. That's because of due to what you could consider either cross breeding. So you're mating these two different bulls with with the dams. So you can see that for modern, the runs of homozygosity is 17%. For pilots is 3%, and Cuthbert is 4%. So we did break down those runs of homozygosity that were fixated through years and years of selection. So, and why is this important? Is because these runs of homozygosity, so the more homozygous or the more homozygosity there is, the more inbred an animal is, and therefore there could be inbreeding depression, etc. So it is important to look at these runs of homozygosity. So now let's talk about the Angus study, and this, as I said, was in collaboration with Jorgensen Cattle here. So a little bit of background how we started this study is David Thomas here from Jorgensen. He approached Dr. Harvey Blackburn at USDA gene bank and asked him for some samples of their old Angus bulls to use on their dams to improve maternal traits, etc. So I will show some of the results of that study. We thought it would be very interesting to look at the progeny of these older bulls. And here I have the Rito 7075 and Scalamere, and these were among the older bulls that they obtained from the germplasm. So the objectives of the study is to evaluate the performance of progeny, as I mentioned, from these older sires, and to also look at their genome, and characterize the differences between the older bulls and the younger bulls, and just see what's different in these older bulls and why are they making good progeny, and why the progeny performs the way they perform. Also look at selection signatures and have more progeny than just the whole seed study, or compare it to the whole seed study. The pedigree included 88,000 animals with birth years from 1937 to 2023. So this is a deep pedigree. We looked at the quality of the pedigree, etc., but we primarily focused on the nucleus herd. So we did clustering analysis to look at the genetic variation that there is in the pedigree. As you can see, we have 6 clusters, and once you look at each cluster by itself, you can trace it to a sire line like Traveler, MLS, Rito, etc. So there is genetic variation within that within this herd. For the phenotypic and genomic data that we used, we have older bulls. So we did not have a lot of phenotypes for the older bulls. I think we had around 18 older bulls that we have used in the study. And so we used growth traits just because we had the most number of phenotypes. So you can see that for birth weight, we had 114 observations, 137 for weight, and just only 18 observations. So keep this in mind because the numbers are small, so we have to be a little bit cautious in making conclusions or so yeah, the genomic data, we had 40,000 SNP markers that we used. So we wanted to look at how these older bulls compare to the overall genetic trend of Angus. So that black line is the Angus trend. So you can see that for birth weight, yes, those older bulls are in the trend line. Some older, like I would say the 1990s bulls have higher birth weights. So for weaning weight and yearling weight, you can see that the Jorgensen and Angus bulls are, better, or, are higher than the Angus trend for both weaning weight and yearling weight. So again, these are the older sires, those 18 older sires that we focused on that have a progeny with moderate dams. So then we went ahead and estimated genomic breeding values, and also to look at how those compare, and adjusted phenotypes. And so we used a mixed model. So the fixed effects are listed there. That's what we adjusted for. And also we included the random effects, the animal and the maternal for weaning weight and birth weight. So these are genomic estimated breeding values. So you can see that for birth weights, it's those GEBVs are going down. For weaning weight and yearling weight, you can see that the trend is going up as we expected. We did not have a lot of observations of older bulls. So that's why you don't see as many adults on the early years. Again, adjusted, so we wanted to look at how these older bulls with, contemporary dams compare to recent bulls with contemporary dams. So the x-axis here is the difference in years between the difference in the birth year between the dam and the sire birth year. So those higher numbers here. So these would be the animals from older bulls with contemporary dams. So you can see, so the take-home message here, I would say, is these older bulls are definitely on par with the younger bulls or the recent bulls. They are not performing worse, or they are performing just as good as these recent bulls. So they do have some beneficial, I would say, genome segments that they are contributing. So then we looked at inbreeding. Perhaps we can explain this performance by by inbreeding, or we alleviated inbreeding by breeding older bulls to these to recent dams, perhaps heterosis. So we looked at those measurements. So these are the results. Please keep in mind that, for a lot of these values, they are not significant because of the low number of observations. But you can see that for the recent bulls progeny, you can see that the pedigree inbreeding, the table on the right, they are negative, which suggests that there is inbreeding depression for all three growth traits: birth weight, weaning weight, and yearling weight. Genomic inbreeding the same way for birth weight is not significant, but you can see that there is inbreeding depression there. But for older bulls progeny, you can see that it's not the case. There is no inbreeding depression. Yes, it's not significant at those P levels, but you can see that there is not inbreeding depression. So perhaps one plausible explanation is we did alleviate inbreeding by crossing these older bulls to contemporary dams. So then we looked at the genomic heterozygosity, and these are just the number of heterozygous SNPs divided by the total number of SNPs to get an estimate of heterozygosity. So here is another story that recent Bose progeny. It was positive. Heterozygosity had positive effect on those growth traits. But for older bulls, it was negative. And this could be explained by perhaps when we crossed these older bulls with contemporary dams, we broke up those homozygous regions that were, positively contributing to these traits. Because with years and years of selection, you build up these, configuration of genes or runs of homozygosity that are, beneficial. And so when you crossbreed, or in this case, breed older bulls, we broke up some of that. So it's a trade-off, and we did alleviate inbreeding, but heterozygosity, we broke up those runs of homozygosity. So then we went ahead and looked at these runs of homozygosity, and for the people that are not familiar with these runs of homozygosity in the genome, is basically here we have the two homologous chromosomes, and you can see that the ones the SNPs or single nucleotide polymorphism in red are homozygous, AA, CC, GG, etc. So that's those stretches, I believe, it's a lot of heuristics how to determine what is the optimum size or what is the minimum size of one homozygosity, but it's usually 1 megabase pair. So these homozygous regions, they get built up by inbreeding or line breeding, and also by by selection. These are just the parameters that we used to obtain runs of homozygosity, and these they differ depending on the density of the SNP panel that you use. So, for example, for a high density, 700,000 SNPs, these numbers will be different. These are summary statistics of these runs of homozygosity. So, these are the bottom row is the average combined length of runs of homozygosity, and it is 486 megabase pairs. So they are pretty long. These are just the runs of homozygosity again by each chromosome. Excuse me. So the y-axis is the coefficient of autozygosity, and the x-axis is the chromosome number. So you can see that in chromosome 20 and chromosome 21, you can see a high level of homozygosity. So there is something there in that in those two chromosomes why it became homozygous. And so we did look at the genes that fall in that region, perhaps with selection objectives, they were fixating these genes in these two chromosomes. So we wanted to see if this pattern happened a long time ago, or is this recent? So we did two Manhattan plots of older bulls, homozygosity, and recent bulls. And these recent bulls are from 2019 to 2022. So you can see that also in chromosome 20 and chromosome 21, there is that high level of homozygosity. So this is perhaps something that was built up a while back. And actually, you can look at the other chromosomes, and they are pretty similar to to recent bulls runs of homozygosity, perhaps because of line breeding that was practiced, they fixated these runs of homozygosity. These are the enrichment study of QTL regions falling in these two chromosomes. And you can see that the traits, so the top enriched type of these QTLs is meat and carcass and reproduction, but you have there also, like maturity rate, shear force. So few traits or QTLs that fall in that region that have been selected on throughout the years. So we went ahead and looked at the regions of runs of homozygosity. If these older bulls have any, how much they share with the current bulls or the current progeny. So we looked at the top 10% of bulls and the bottom 10% of bulls for weaning weight and yearling weight. And we looked at how much of these regions they share. And interestingly, we found that, for weaning weight and yearling weight, they both share a higher percentage with the top current bulls than the bottom current bulls for both traits. So here one could say that these older bulls, they do have a beneficial, genes or regions that, are important for weaning weight and yearling weight. And we can see that they share more similarity or more runs of homozygosity with the top performing bulls than the bottom performing bulls. So we found that interesting. So older bulls, they definitely have something beneficial, and and that's why we saw the performance that we saw in the progeny. So then we looked at FST analysis to look at these selection signatures in the genome. Again, you have the x-axis, the chromosome number, and then the fixation index or FST in the y-axis. And FST is done, it looks at the gene frequency or the change in frequencies, so if there was selection in a certain part of the genome, you change the frequency of these SNPs, and basically that's what we observe in for chromosome 20 and 21, and also chromosome 15. So you can see that there has been some selection signatures in these chromosomes. So perhaps there's something there beneficial that they have been selecting on. And so again, enrichment QTL study to look at what's going on in these chromosomes, and these are the various QTLs and their associated traits. There's milk fat, so a lot of milk, production type of QTLs, and also carcass traits in chromosome 14. So these are the selection signatures in this herd. So just some final remarks. Selection does work. I'm not saying that selection does not work. That's why we saw that even older bulls are competing with the recent bulls, but as we all know that the block or additive model that we use is not perfect. It does not consider other effects like dominance, stasis, etc. And so as I showed, the performance of progeny was not negatively impacted. So these older genetics could be used in some situations, depending on what's your, objective. So it could be used, as I put here, for corrected mating, to also inject some genetic diversity, especially now with genomic selection being used. We can see that inbreeding in livestock species is going up. Also alleviate inbreeding depression, with heterosis. And so, yeah, and AGP has, this is the gene bank that I talked about, the USDA's gene bank. It has, like I said, germplasm for a lot of livestock species, and it is definitely a valuable resource for readers. You know, especially if you're interested in obtaining, I guess, you know, older, seeing older genetics. And I think that's all I have for you guys. Yeah, I would like to thank David Thomas and the Jorgensen folks for letting us, you know, use the data and for wanting to collaborate in this project. And also Dr. Harvey Blackburn from the USDA Gene Bank and other collaborators. And thank you all for your attention. So if you have any questions or comments, please, yeah, please don't hesitate. Thanks.